Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton is one of the keystones of the American Catholic Church. She founded the first American religious community for women, the Sisters of Charity. She opened the first American parish school and established the first American Catholic orphanage. All this she did in the span of 46 years while raising her 5 children. Elizabeth was born in 1774. Just 2 years before the United States itself was born. She was the daughter of a wealthy Episcopalian family in New York City. Her mother taught little Elizabeth when she was just a child about the prayers and laid the foundation of her faith. At the age of 3, Elizabeth's mother died and she was left with her father, Dr. Richard Bailey. When Dr. Bailey remarried, Elizabeth's stepmother continued lessons about the Episcopalian faith and God. Also educated by her father, Elizabeth learned from his great virtue to serve the poor of the community. From a young age, Elizabeth could be found bringing food to those less fortunate than herself. Beautiful, vivacious, fluent in French, a fine musician, and an accomplished horsewoman, she grew up and became a popular guest at parties and balls. Small wonder young William Seton, a handsome and wealthy businessman, fell head over heels in love with her. They were soon married and became parents of 5 children. Besides looking after her husband and family, Elizabeth established an organization in New York City called the Widows Society. She and other members daily visited the poor in their homes to nurse and comfort them. Little did Elizabeth know that she would soon become a widow and with her children face sad and difficult times. The Seton family's shipping business went bankrupt when many ships were lost at sea during wars. To make matters worse, William Seton became seriously ill with tuberculosis, which was a dreaded killer in those days. The couple and their oldest daughter, Anna, moved to sunny Italy, where William hoped to regain his health. In spite of their best efforts, William died 2 days after Christmas in Pisa at the age of 37. She wept, then reproached herself for behaving as though God were not present. After William's death, Elizabeth and her daughter remained with William's longtime friends, the Felici family, until the spring of 1804. While waiting to return to America, Elizabeth attended the churches of her Italian friends, where she experienced the Catholic faith. They took Elizabeth to Florence, where the churches overwhelmed her, and the devotion of the common people impressed her. She began attending Mass with her friends and witnessed people's belief in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. Eventually, Elizabeth returned to New York City, determined to become a Catholic. In 1805, having completed instructions in her new faith, Elizabeth was received into the church. She was happy to be a Catholic, but her family of devout Episcopalians was dead set against Elizabeth's decision. At that time, unlike today, people were often very intolerant of other religions. Elizabeth's close relatives chose to forget that they had ever known her and would not lend her money or help pay her bills. She was now a destitute widow with no means to care for her children. It was almost impossible to make ends meet. Elizabeth had to work night and day to make a simple living for her children. She started a school, but that soon closed when students would not come to class simply because their teacher was a Catholic. These months of trial deepened Elizabeth's faith, but also deepened her financial difficulties. A priest in Baltimore, Maryland, learned of Elizabeth's plight and invited her to begin a girls' school in that city. At the time, public schools charged tuition and were only available to the elite of the society. Through the vision of Archbishop Carroll, Elizabeth established a Catholic school which was open to all, free of cost, and focused on the poor and impoverished. Women came to help Elizabeth, and the school grew. Soon, it seemed obvious that God was asking Elizabeth to dedicate her life completely to Him. This was the beginning of the Order of Sisters that Elizabeth founded. Father de Bourgh gave her the title of Mother. Indeed, the title was especially appropriate for Elizabeth. Some of her own children were still at the stone house with her, and she was now the superior of the women who joined the order. As in earlier years with the Widow Society, Elizabeth continued to visit the sick and the poor of the neighborhood. The sisters brought them medicine, food, and clothes, cleaned their homes, cared for the children, and offered kind words of encouragement. Life for the religious community was difficult. The sisters had little income, and their housing was sparse. The cold winters took their toll, but the work prospered with Elizabeth at the helm. By the next year, they were placed in charge of an orphanage in Philadelphia. The Sisters of Charity began establishing orphanages and hospitals across the United States and continued teaching the poor through parochial education. Tuberculosis ravaged the community. Anna, Elizabeth's oldest daughter, contracted the disease and died. Rebecca, the youngest daughter, too died in her mother's arms in 1816 when she was only 14 years old. Elizabeth, too, was losing her own battle with tuberculosis. The trials of separation from her children, conflict, and death had worn on her. The night of her death, January 4th, 1821, she began the prayers for the dying herself, and one of the sisters, knowing that she loved French, prayed the Gloria and the Magnificent in French with her. Early in the morning, on January 4th, 1821, Saint Elizabeth died peacefully. In 1959, Pope John XXIII declared Mother Seton a venerable, and in 1963, a blessed. Then, on September 14, 1975, Pope Paul VI named Elizabeth Seton Saint of the Church. She had no extraordinary gifts. She was not a mystic or stigmatic. She did not prophesy or speak in tongues. She had two great devotions: abandonment to the will of God and an ardent love for the Blessed Sacrament.